So thank you very much, everybody. It's a great honor and pleasure to actually present to you today. My name is Ashutosh Malegaonkar. I am part of Cisco DevNet. Been with Cisco for about 20 years, actually more than 20 years now. Did like routers, startups, two startups inside Cisco, and then I started being one of the founding members of DevNet. So today what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an introduction of like what DevNet is, and then I will walk you through like some of the use cases that we do with co-creations. So first of all, if you want to like either reach out to me anytime, my LinkedIn profile as well as my Twitter handle is here. And one of the things that I would love to do is I am like always there for you, in the sense like I'm not just a technical person, but I do like other stuff. So please reach out to me anytime. So that's me. So as I was preparing for the talk, one of the things that I said, okay, what do I actually talk about this time? And what really told me is I recently read a book about the brain, the right brain and the left brain. And it talks about, like the logical brain versus the magical brain, where you're actually innovating and visualizing, doing creative stuff. So the thing that DevNet actually has to offer is a combination of these two. With DevNet, we actually have a logical part of things where we actually tell you a lot of like the learning that goes around, the sandboxes that are there. So we talk about that, but then what the customers are actually looking for. So what we are noticing customers are saying, or our developer ecosystem is saying, is like, hey, now I understood the APIs, what's next for me? What I also see is people are saying, hey, like I understand like this is the way the product has the API, but I want to apply it to my everyday workflow. I want to solve a business problem. So, like the presentation will actually show you some of those things where I'm mapping the logical view into a magical view of everyday use. So that's what this presentation is all about. So today, as I said, the logical view of DevNet, then I'll talk about the magical use cases and how they connect with each other. So before I start, I wanted to give a very quick introduction of DevNet. So DevNet is the developer program for Cisco. So it is built on top of like the platforms that Cisco has to offer. So if you see a lot of platforms, nearly 80 platforms now have APIs that can be actually integrated into our everyday workflows. DevNet is a program that is on top of these platforms where we enable developers to actually look at sample code, use cases, and stuff like that. So here's some of the things, the learning labs are one of them. The second is that we actually have sample code, we have like sandboxes. We like to inspire people with like different use cases that we've seen and show the use cases there. And the sandboxes, which is something that is very, very popular because now a customer is able to actually like go and try out a particular API without really buying that equipment. Or if I have that equipment, like a lot of times we see like customers don't want to disturb their like production networks. What they want to do is like, hey, let me try it out in the sandbox. Let me see how that API works. And then once they are comfortable with that application, then they can deploy it in their production network. So that's something that happens in the sandboxes. And co-creations is what I lead, and I'm going to walk you through what co-creations means as well. Now, the other thing is like today as we talk, like we have more than 550,000 developers in our ecosystem. They are DevNet members today. We have around 33,000 companies that are part of DevNet. So people from all over our customer base are here. We have like around 72,000 like learning labs that have been taken so far. So this is amazing because what we are seeing is a transition where networkers are actually transitioning to be software programmers. So which is awesome. We are seeing that transition happen. And then like on a monthly basis, we are seeing a lot of active users who come to DevNet and try out our different resources. Now, one thing that what we are seeing is that once we have the modern programmable infrastructure and which is giving you the APIs, we can start building modern applications. The thing that we have done in DevNet is we have broken it down into like two parts. One is the infrastructure devs, and the second one is the app devs. Now, in the infrastructure devs, these are the people who are Cisco customers. They have been using Cisco. They want to see how they can actually automate IT. They want to see how they can build out new networks. So that's something like we provide them with that information. The app devs are these are new people who have never thought about Cisco in terms of hey, I don't know why I should use Cisco. So a classic example of that is and I'm going to talk about that later, which is Fastlane, which is something where you can have quality of service for iOS developers. Now, iOS developers typically are very much hey, I need to give the best experience for my application. When we talk QoS to them, they are like, oh my God, what are you talking about? It's QoS. So we have to tell them what it is and what Fastlane does for them. And that way they can start doing coming to Cisco and start using that information. So that's basically we have kind of bucketed into two different buckets. So now let me actually talk about what DevNet is all about. Now, as I said, we have the API experience, that is one. So we give the documentation, we can actually try the APIs live on our sites. We can have the sandbox, which is a 24/7 as well as a reserved sandbox. So reserved sandbox, typically what you would do is you would actually go in and you can destroy the configuration if you need. You can try out a new config and restart your network. And in the read only, which is 24/7, you would just try it as a user, you would use it and leave. So that's sandboxes. The other part is about training and tutorials. Now, we have a lot of training that we've been doing. Recently, we've also started a video series. So if you want to do automation, that's something that we have a Net DevOps series that we've done. We've done a SD-WAN video series because developers are looking at it from hey, we understand what SD-WAN is at a high level, but can you show me how to write code for SD-WAN? So we have actually a video series on that, APIs that map into okay, I can do vManage. Those kind of things are in there. The learn and code is obviously the learning labs that we have. The code is sample code that we give so that developers can start building on top of that sample code. Co-creations is the thing that what we do is we work with our customers, partners and developers and see if we can build out or solve their problems in the real world. So that's what we do with co-creations. And finally, if you see at the ecosystem bucket, we've recently announced two ecosystems. Okay, one is our exchange for code and the second one is our ecosystem exchange. So what the code exchange does is it's basically a GitHub layer on top of GitHub. And sorry, not a GitHub layer, it's a search layer on top of GitHub. So for example, if I were to actually search for DNA in our regular GitHub, what's going to happen is you're going to see DNA sequencing, you're going to see a lot of other information that would pop up. Versus if you come to Code Exchange and you type DNA or DNAC, you're going to see code that is relevant to Cisco. It is a curated list of code that you can actually look at. And the ecosystem exchange is something that our partners are actually building out applications and our customers are able to view those applications in the ecosystem exchange. So if I'm a customer who actually bought, let's say, the location services from Meraki, I would actually go in and look at the ecosystem exchange and see who are the partners and what are the apps that they have developed. And once I know those applications, I can actually go and take a, in fact, contact them, deploy it in my environment as well. So that's ecosystem exchange.
Just a quick question regarding this. Cisco's is acquiring a lot of companies, yeah?
Yes.
So for example, Viptela was an independent company before. So when they joined Cisco, you from your DevNet point of view, you try to normalize the documentation and bring everything that they had before into your DevNet, let's say, experience,
Correct.
yeah?
Yes, so absolutely. So that's a transition that happens because one of the thing is that they might have APIs in a different format. So what we work is like, first of all, we get them onto DevNet. The API like namespace might be different, but what we do is first get them on our site. And once they're on our site, we also work with them and make sure that they start following our Cisco standard API. So that's what we do with them. So
yeah, so it is a journey. I can understand. It cannot go from 0 to 100 in 1 second. What do you think? How long will it take to get new acquired companies into your DevNet experience?
So it varies. It varies with different acquisitions. Some acquisitions, like we've done, we've completed that in maybe like 6 to 9 months. Some like take even longer. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Okay. So what I'm going to do now is actually like shift gears a little bit. As I said, DevNet CoCreations is something that I lead. We are a team of like thinkers, evangelists. We like to be innovative. We want to like show what can be done with APIs and the use cases that we can solve. So we also work with our strategic partners like Apple or Google or Nvidia or Verizon. So we work with them to actually like make sure that like some of the use cases that they are working on, we can also help out with that. That's one. And then obviously like we work with our customers and our ecosystem partners, and that includes our developers as well. So what I'm going to do now is start explaining you, like, I started off by saying I'm going to tell you the logic and the magic. So what I'll do is I'll let you experience the magic that we built for a particular use case, and then I'll walk you through the logic that made it happen. So let's go. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is SD-WAN managed service providers. So this was an interesting one. So this was like, there is managed service providers who use Viptela or a Cisco SD-WAN. And what we wanted to do is they said that they wanted to see all their customers in one dashboard. They could have technically used the multi-tenant SD-WAN dashboard, but they are so small that they're not able to like use the multi-tenant. So they said, I have like less than 20 customers. I want to have a single instance of SD-WAN, and I want to actually like see if I can see it in a single dashboard. So what we did is we actually we worked with one MSP and built out a dashboard for them. So in the real world, right? I mean, this is how like the SD-WAN architecture looks like, where like I would have a multi-tenant view. If I'm a service provider, I would say, hey, this is customer 1, customer 2, customer 3, and when I bring up the customers, I have a dashboard to actually see the different like layers of of those customers. So that's what happens. Now, what happened is with this customer, what he said is that I am a managed service provider and I want to bring up like different customers one at a time. And like they said, I want to bring up customer A. After some time, I want to bring up customer B and then customer C. So today what happens? They were actually like going to each instance and looking at their status and saying, oh yeah, the customer is okay. Or they were writing, they would actually have a person look at it, I mean logging every day. What we came up with is a particular like dashboard which is very similar to our multi-tenant dashboard. And with that dashboard, what we were able to do is they would actually like see all the information in one place. And in fact, like the reason we built it that way is because like if they ever move to the multi-tenant dashboard, they will actually have no problems because it looks pretty much the same. And the reason we could do this is because we had the APIs available for them. So this is a view of that dashboard. So think about it as like we are able to see like all the customers that are there like, you know, I'm able to see the tenants, I'm able to see the site health, I'm able to see the edge health, and like I could actually drill down on like each one of them independently. So it looks as if like, you know, this is a multi-tenant view, but now the customer or the MSP is able to like look at this from a single point of view. Now, the good part of this is that on our dev center, which is on DevNet, what we have done is we have actually created this whole demo is available live. So you could actually just download this demo now and start using it for your MSPs.
So is it also talking with the OSS, BSS systems of that provider?
It is not. It is not. So what it is doing, it is just talking all the vManage API, I mean V APIs. That's all it is doing. So that way, like you could actually see like everything in one place.
But it's not integrated with NMS, let's say, right?
No.
Well, your OSS system is supposed to call this script
Correct.
to provision the SD-WAN stuff.
So that is basically this software. So if there is a MSP out there and who wants to have that single pane of glass, they should go and download this and they can start using it now. So that's pretty awesome. So this is the logic behind the magic that we just saw. So I'm going to move on to the next project. It's basically called Meraki Beat, and the Meraki Beat is like an interesting project. And one of the problems that a customer came to us and they said, hey, you know, like I own a coffee shop, and what they are saying is that on certain days they are seeing that there are less POS transactions that happen, and they didn't really know what was happening, and they said like we are not doing anything different on the other days when the POS transactions are normal. So one of the things that like we said is let's look at your wireless health API, and Meraki has a wireless health API. So we actually attached the API, we started looking at the logs, and what we realized is that on a particular day there is a lot of interference that is happening from the surrounding areas, and because of that the customers who are coming in, they're trying to connect and they are having a bad Wi-Fi experience. Now because of that, what ended up happening is like it's like a coffee shop. You go there, you sit there for hours, and if you don't have good Wi-Fi connectivity, you just walk out, right? And that's exactly what was happening. And the reason we could actually like go figure this out is, one is because we had the APIs, the health APIs from Meraki, and then we actually built it out to actually simulate and see what was really happening. So if you look at this picture, so if you look at the left hand side, Meraki has like health API, it has the camera APIs, and the scanning is basically the location APIs. We actually wrote a project called Meraki Beat, and the reason it is called Meraki Beat is because Beats is a open source software which connects into Elasticsearch, where you can actually dump information into Elasticsearch. Now Meraki Beat is taking that information, putting it in Elasticsearch, and you are basically normalizing all the data that you are getting from Meraki as well as from other sources into Elasticsearch. And then you can write a dashboard, or what you could do is you can write your own applications on top of it. So with this, we were able to actually see the correlationship between the POS transactions at a particular time and the Wi-Fi health at a particular time. So this was very interesting, and we made it open source so that actually people can start using it for any other application. And we've built a couple of other applications on top of Meraki Beat as well. One is in the retail space, and one is just for fun. You know, we have something in the lab that's pretty interesting as well. Now, again, going back to the logic of this. So this, as I said, this project is open sourced. It is in our code exchange. If you go to developer.cisco.com and our code exchange, you will be able to find this repo, and you can download it. You can run it in two ways. You can just run a Docker compose if you need, or you can actually download the whole source and run the source as well. So that's Meraki Beat. So I'm going to move on to the next example. So the next example is the Apple Fastlane validation example. Now, for people who are not familiar with Apple Fastlane, so when an iOS device actually connects to a Cisco Wi-Fi, it could be the Meraki Wi-Fi or it could be a traditional AeroNet Wi-Fi. What happens is we are able, like the Apple apps that are running on that iOS device have the ability to actually like generate a tag that says that I want to have priority of traffic for this particular app. So the example of this is like in a hospital, typical hospital where there's a communication that is happening between nurses and doctors. You want that communication to be like the best. So you would actually, and if it's a voice call, I would actually say that give it the highest priority, and then you will have a better experience for that voice call. So that's one. And for the Fastlane validation, what we have done is inside DevNet, we have actually created a validation lab where we are able to like validate applications from different app developers. So enterprise app developers from Apple, around, like Cisco, they come to us, we validate their applications. And one of the things that we noticed is if I'm in the lab and I'm building my application, it's hard for them to actually like see whether their application is really working or not, whether the tag that they have applied, whether it works or not, because they might or may not have a real network. So what we did is we actually built an application for them. What they can do is they can like capture traffic in their network, and we show them a visualization of the traffic that is captured. And in this case, what you can see is we have the 5 lanes of Fastlane, where we have the voice, video, the real-time data that got added in iOS 12, and then you have the best effort and the background traffic. So now as a developer, I can run this application in my local network, change my code, try it out and say, oh, I see the traffic is being routed correctly. I mean, it's not routed correctly visually, like now I know that it is there. And then they have the confidence to say, okay, the changes that I've made are good, let me send it for validation to Cisco. So as I said, what we did, so the application here is the Fastlane visualization app, and the way it works is like at the most bottom layer we have a PCAP that basically we capture the traffic. It's stored in like the file system, and then once in the file system, like we use Logstash and the ELK stack to push the data into Elasticsearch. And from the Elasticsearch, we have an application that basically is looking at the traffic and like showing the visualizations. So that's the basic flow that we are using. Now, and plus you can look at the Kibana to look at the dashboard, to look, like you can build your own dashboards to say that.
But for the application, when you market, maybe network is not deploying quality of service on the network. So in case of congestion, let's say, it will not be prioritized, or it will not get minimum guaranteed bandwidth, etc. Right?
Correct.
So you are marking it basically.
Correct. Because
source.
At source, that's correct. So the reason that is because like a lot of times the developers don't have that network, right? So they want to just try it out, and they say, okay, I want to try whether it works or not.
So I've got a question.
Yeah.
Since the beginning of your presentation, you're talking a lot about developers, and I guess that of course it fits with the DevNet narrative, right?
Right.
My challenge here in this presentation is I'm trying to understand how does this fit to customers, because not all customers have developers at hand. Some just have network engineers. Some even don't have decent network engineers. So how do they leverage what you're presenting here?
Yeah, so actually that's a very good question, because we see that happening with our customers, right? So when we talk with our customers, they say that one of the problems that we are facing is that I have network developers and I'm trying to like see how I can apply this, right? So as I said, like one of the paths for them is the learning path, right? To understand that what they can do in automation. So from the infrastructure point of view, like those network engineers are able to actually automate their networks using some of the tools that we've already built for them. So that is one. Okay. The second is that the customers can, when they come to us, the co-creations, we actually consult with them. Like it's like we literally do a one-on-one session with them, and we are able to like give like that guidance, saying that okay, what we can do for you. Okay, that is the second one. And the third one is we have something called as a DevNet Express event. I mean, it's called a DevNet Express event. It's a 2-day workshop. So what we do there is we get the SEs, the customer and the DevNet team together in one room, and based on a particular technology, what we do is we run a workshop for 2 days. So right from like taking, like if you, let's say it's security. So we talk about our security products, then at the next is like we give them a hands-on like experience of what they can do with those APIs, and then we also like want to like solve some of those problems, right? So there is a consulting session that happens with those customers. So that is the generic DevNet Express event. And then finally, like the fourth one, which we haven't done a lot, but there are a few folks in DevNet who do that, is because of these DevNet Express events, customers say, can you please handhold me? And we actually like go build an event for them, but it is like we handhold to solve a particular use case. So that's how we have started using like, like inserting with customers. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
Well, also you have to keep in mind that even though he doesn't want to say this is a marketing tool, but it's a useful marketing tool, because a network engineer doesn't have a clue what can be done. So if we take a look at this, we might get some ideas. Oh, gee, I could do this in my network. I had no idea that this is even possible. And then, of course, you can believe the magical religion of we will all be Python programmers. And you waste your time trying to learn Python. Or you grab this example and you throw the code at your Python buddy. You buy him a beer, you give him the code, and then you tell him, now adapt this code to my use case. And he has a starting point. He doesn't have to start, reading the manuals and trying to understand what this networking thing is actually supposed to be doing.
You had a
Out of
question.
curiosity, how do you get from PCAP into Logstash?
So basically, we run PCAP. So there is a tool with PCAP that will basically just write a JSON packet into the file system.
So you're using T-Shark for that? Okay.
So that's the use case for Apple. So what I'm going to do next is talk about security application that we built recently. So the one of the thing that like they talked about is like, hey, they want to give make every employee in the enterprise a security person, right? Because you get emails, you get like signatures that basically look fishy or whatever, right? So what we did is we actually built a bot for the WebEx Teams product, and the way it works is something like this. So as a person who's using WebEx Teams, the bot would actually go in, given a particular signature or given a particular like URL or a domain, it could go and tell whether it is a valid domain or a not a valid domain, or it's a malicious domain, or whether the signature is malicious or not. So this is a bot that we built. So if you are on WebEx Teams, you could actually add it on in your room as well and try it out for yourself. Now the way it works is like this is a snapshot of how it works. So somebody is like seeing a particular malware executed, they take that signature, the bot starts looking at it and then says, oh, let me see what it is, and it comes back and says, oh, this is a malicious signature. And now as a security person or as an employee, you're able to like take a look at it and say, oh, I don't need to like open this email or whatever, like it comes from a different signature. Or the second example is like a domain. So like somebody looks at it, says, hey, you know, I saw this domain, what do you think? Like it sends the API to the Talos Intelligent API and comes back and says whether like the API, the domain is blocked or not blocked. So that way, like, you know, it becomes a very simple thing from every user point of view. You don't have to be an expert in understanding those nitty-gritties. So that's a basic thing that we did for the WebEx teams.
Okay, so the idea is that every employee in the company can use this.
Yeah, they
to
could
investigate, and it's not thought for like security operations center people, because the security operations center you won't have the ability to go on something like this because you are isolated in most situations.
Correct. Okay. I mean, by default, like your network is already in Umbrella, but like let's say you are at home and you are not on Cisco Umbrella, and you get a signature that or some domain that you think is a little odd. So what you could do is take that domain, try it out, and say it comes back and tells you, no, this is not a good domain to look at. So again, going back to the logic behind it, like we have a security dev center. What you could do is go in there and take a look at all the different APIs, the different products that Cisco has for security. And then obviously, like, you know, there is the bot kit. If you want to build out the bot kit for WebEx Teams, it's pretty simple. We have a template that people can look at and start using as well. Now, the last one, before I move on, any questions? Okay.
Yeah, I've got one actually.
Yeah.
I'm still a bit concerned about how you're going to bridge the gap between a network engineer and a developer, because like Ivan said, you could buy a beer for your friend, but you say that a lot of these are simple to understand. I consider myself fairly intelligent, and I look at these APIs and I don't know what half of them is doing. So are you going out to partners to actually solve the problems for them, with them, or somehow, you know, promote this bridging of
it's both. Okay. And believe me, like, you know, like there are a lot of people who say that, hey, you know, I'm a network engineer, I'm scared of like code or this thing, right? But when they come in and they start looking at the Python 101 class, and again, I know that they are not going to be experts, right? But when they take that class and then when they take the next related like learning lab for, let's say, the security, right? They understand why that logic is happening, right? You know, like how I'm calling that API. Sure. So that is one thing that we are doing, right? And in the DevNet Express events, the network engineer is also in contact with our SEs. He's in contact with our experts physically in that particular place, right? So they are able to like actually get more information. So we work together with them.
Okay, let me add to that, because this again looks like this thing is easy. It's not. Man, you spent I don't know how many years to master BGP and MPLS and DVPN and all that stuff. Anything worth doing will take years before you will be good at that stuff.
10,000 hours?
10,000 hours, yeah. And anyone who tells you that this can be done in an afternoon and you go into this 2-day workshop and you'll come out and you know what we're doing, it's like you're going to a CCNA class 5-day and now you're a network engineer. Come on. I mean, it's totally understandable that you don't have a clue what that is. You would have to spend months, maybe years, figuring that out, and then you will be a network automation expert. But today, we're not even at the CCNA level.
Yeah, so there is one thing to add, just to add to that, right? I mean, a lot of the automation that is happening, what we have done is we have built like pre-built packages, right? That the engineer can use. And then the other thing is like this concept of net DevOps that we have like, you know, started, where like you could actually be like saying that this is my network, the configuration for my particular router or switch, and then you are committing that code into Git as actual code. And then once that happens, like think about it, did a network engineer ever commit code into Git? Probably not, but now because of that learning, he's able to do that. Even he's committing just the sample like config. Now once that config is put in, if you run through the automation of like what is there, the system will come out and build out a virtual network. It will try that config and come back and tell you that whether that config really worked or not, right? And again, it's so there is.
Sorry to spoil the fun. That doesn't work ever because the interface names are different.
No, but you change it, right? You change it like.
And you can test most of the control plane, and you can't test data plane, and any hardware dependency will not show up, and anything that is related to the set of features you configure and might trigger a bug will not show up, and so on and so on.
I agree with that.
Wonderful idea.
Yeah, and I see also for a long period of time, like you mentioned, it will be a co-outward thing. Yeah, you will have the automation part, and you have the networking security, and you always need multiple people working together,
yes,
collaboratively. It's a hard thing to do. There are the devils in the detail, like interface names and all APIs that are changing with different software versions upgraded, and then you need to do different API calls, and all these little things makes it really hard for us as an enterprise. We don't have 1,000 developers or so to implement this stuff. Yes.
Well, also keep in mind that if you want to automate the network, it's the most critical part of your company infrastructure. If the network is down, you can go home. So if you have people that are developing your other stuff, like, I don't know, business support systems or manufacturing support systems, network automation is as critical as that. And you should treat it like that.
I see in the beginning, like your one example with the pickup and so on, I see a lot of getting out information. Yeah, that is a great method to start. Manipulating actually the live passes and so on, that is, let's say, the golden discipline. And yeah, like you said.
Well, even there, you know, if you're just playing with device configurations and templating, and you do that offline, and you compare them, and you deploy them at midnight, that's perfect.
Yeah.
If you want to change your running network with API, good luck with that.
Yeah. So I would also like to know from your experience inside Cisco, I can imagine you have development teams, and you have teams that are subject matter expert on the products, Yes. How do you work together to get the DevNet tools that you developed already together? How is let's say, team put together that is developing these apps?
Yeah. So from like from the customer point of view, right? Or
how make a concrete example of one that you showed us. For example, the PCAP one.
Yeah. So for the PCAP one, right? You know, that was very like, because for the Apple Fastlane, what happens is we are talking to these app developers when they come in for validation. And when we talk to them, one of the things that they say is that I don't have a Wi-Fi because with Cisco, or I don't have it with Meraki, because these are app developers, right? And they say like, we don't really know anything to do with Cisco. So what we did is for them, one of the things is we worked with the Meraki team and said, okay, can we actually provide them an AP that we can actually have them in their lab? Okay, so that was one. The second thing that we did is like we bring in like other folks like from the BUs to make sure that like, you know, that when we talk to the customer, they are in sync with what they are really expecting and what the BU also is expecting. So we bring in a kind of a tiger team together to make sure that we are addressing the customer's problem.
And last but not least, if you miss something, you find out, okay, this is really something where the API is not giving us any information about it, then the feedback is going back to the BU.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So actually that is one thing that we are also driving in DevNet is we are constantly giving feedback to like what we hear from the customers. And just to give you like, to be fair and frank is, and your question that you asked at the beginning, right? that like I have company A, Cisco has APIs, there is another product that has APIs. You as an enterprise developer, you look at these APIs and you say, oh, all these 3 APIs look so different, right? I have to understand the keys over here, I have to understand username, password. So what we are doing internally in Cisco is we are driving something called as API standardization. Okay, so it's not just like the outbound things, but we are also doing the inbound. So we are able to like go in to the BUs and say, hey, like you're developing a new API, you better come to us for the namespace. Okay, that's one. The second is like there are new products which are happening currently. We are reviewing their APIs for them. And like one of the example is, for example, is the camera API that happened for Meraki. We actually we were their first kind of the customer for the API, and we realized, yeah, this is not going to work, or this is bad design. So we actually gave them feedback there itself, right? So those are the kind of things that do happen. And obviously, whatever we are hearing from customers, example is like we're talking to a big service provider, and they said we've been using Cisco SD-WAN, and we have some I've built a lot of scripts on top of it. So they said we want to give feedback, and we actually did that with the customer to make sure that it's going back to the BU. So let me move on. The next use case is about machine learning, and this is a use case that, again, this is a retail customer. The question that they had was hey, what we are seeing is that the retail store is still the place where a lot of the transactions are happening. But what they also want to do is they also want to change the experience of how people are shopping inside. Now, one of the applications that we built, in fact, there is a partner that we work with. They're also doing where I can scan a particular product, and I say I can scan different products, and I can check out. So that is one. So that is a good experience that the customer is getting. Now, the second experience that we are doing, and this is an incubation project with the customer, where they are saying is that they want to actually, one is they want to track where customers are going, but then the second one is that they want to even avoid the concept of scanning what they are grabbing, right? If I'm grabbing a particular item, they want to remove that as well. So this is that Amazon Go kind of use case where people can just walk in, grab something, and put it in their basket, right? So the thing that we built here is we had a face detector, as well as again, this is happening at the edge. So either on the APs or on the edge devices, where we are able to look at the person. We are asking them to the only thing that we are asking them to do is show a unique QR code that will be generated on the fly. It's not it's a stored QR code. It's a unique QR code, but from then onwards, that person and that face. And then wherever that person is walking, you'll be able to see that person where he's going. So again, this is not something that has been implemented fully. It is an incubation project, but this is a place where I wanted to show you where what we are doing is with our CCP platform, where CCP is our cloud container platform. We are taking different cameras that are coming in. We have written an object detector and object recognizer. And what it is doing is it is sending information into the private cloud that is running on CCP. So we don't actually send any facial face information or anything to the public cloud. It is still sitting in their private cloud. But then they can write applications on top in the public cloud that could query certain things and get information from there. So this is that basic workflow where what we are seeing is if I see a particular face, we are able to get the metadata of that face, and then we are getting the face vector, and we are storing only the face vector in the database. So we are really not storing images, we are not storing like video, we are storing that information in the database, and then the same thing when the application is actually querying you, you would take a photo, you would generate the vector, and we have created a vector search engine. So you could go and look at that vector and see whether it matches. So then you can track where a person is. Yes.
2 questions. First, how does this work with GDPR? And second, what's the percentage of false positives and false negatives?
Yeah, yeah. So for the GDPR, I agree that there is a lot of concern, but let me
stay away. Okay,
yeah.
I got
So
it.
let me. The reason that's why I said like the beginning I said it's incubation. There's a reason for it, is because one of the things is it's not just about the face, right? It could be an object that we can just track rather than the face. So it could be the cart that the person is carrying. Okay, so it's just to show the concept where instead of you coming in, like when you come in, instead of detecting your face, I could be detecting the cart that you're carrying. And once I know the way, like, maybe it's the way it is, right? So we can actually track that. But again, I don't want to, like, the reason I said, like, we are storing the vector into the private cloud. We are not storing any names. We are not, right now, even now, we are not storing any photos in the database at all. Okay, so we don't really know what that vector means, and the vector is a 512 byte array.
Well, you are going down the path of anonymized cookies, and we know that you can identify a person even though the data is anonymized, so be careful there.
Sure. I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, and that is the question that has been coming up a lot. So thanks again for bringing it up. So that was the first question, and the second question was
false positives, false negatives.
Yeah, so we do see, like, based on like lighting conditions, we are seeing a lot of false positives. Okay. So that is what we are seeing. And one other thing that we are also seeing is, like, if I have the placement of the cameras also matters a lot, right? Because like it has to get the right angle of the face to, like, for you to get the right image. So that is something that we are playing with. And in fact, like I was recently at NRF, and what I'm seeing is that retailers are putting like small cameras on the shelves for just to see what people are grabbing. So instead of the person, it's going to be the object that they're grabbing, right? So we could come up with different tools as well. So that was that use case where, like, the reason I wanted to actually show you this is because one is the CCP platform, because it is bringing you the Kubernetes cluster on premise. Okay, and you are able to like write your applications, and we can basically call like either Google or Amazon integrations that CCP has already made. So that is something interesting that like as enterprises you can start using.
But where is the face
detector?
Face detector, let's put it this way. So
yeah.
Where do you transform face into vector? Is it on the camera, or is it in the background in the cloud?
So it's in the camera. So there are two places. One is the Meraki camera itself has like machine learning happening. So they can tell you like how many people are sitting here. That's one. They are not doing how many, like, who is this? Okay, but like what we have done is, like, if you take a particular camera, we have like a GPU at the edge. So you could have an NVIDIA like GPU, and you could basically be streaming that camera feed into that GPU. That's what will do the face detector and the recognition and send the vector back into CCP.
But that GPU wouldn't be on the camera. It would be.
It wouldn't be
in the retail store somewhere in the back office.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you also like detect emotions or some specific feature in the face, or just?
You can detect motion. You can detect emotions, whether the person is happy or not happy. Like you can detect a lot of
face
what they're talking.
going to the roof. Yeah.
Yeah, you can detect a lot of stuff actually. So that's the thing. Like this is pretty interesting space to look at because ML is becoming pretty hot, and what we are seeing is like especially like businesses are looking to solve and like automate stuff a lot. So this is an interesting space that we are looking at.
Last question on this one. It sounds exciting, but where's machine learning in this?
No, so if you look at machine learning, right? So this is the machine learning is really happening where the object detection is happening.
That's object detection. That's not machine learning.
No. So think about it this way, right? I could be doing object detection. The reason it happens is because there is a machine learning model that has been downloaded at the edge. Okay, so what you could be doing is you could be doing the machine learning in the cloud and sending down the model to the edge. And that's what will basically say, oh, today it is a packet of chips that I want to detect, but tomorrow it could be like sodas, right? So I'm going to send a model over there. So that's what is machine learning.
So effectively, somewhere in the background, you are training the model and building the model, and then you download the model with the computed weights down to be executed on the GPU or wherever.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So before I end, definitely visit our DevNet site, and then also DevNet CoCreations, developer.cisco.com/CoCreations is the site, and also make sure that you go to DevNet and see all the resources that are available for you.